You want to see? If you have, asked me. Okay. Today we'll continue to see some stuff in PHP. You can try the code on your own. Don't let me tell you. You should train as more as you can, of course, right? We'll introduce some other basic concepts like functions. Okay. Very easy. How to declare a function just with the keyword function here. Just this. Then the name of the function and the parameters. The parameters don't need a type, right? This is the body, this is a time machine, very smart. It's using the time function that will return a timestamp. That is the number of seconds since this date, a lot of seconds. And the amount of seconds you put in input will be added to the time value. And this will print the future, essentially. This is the idea. Anyway, what is important is how you recreate, how you declare a function using the function keyword, and that's it, except name and parameters. Okay? Should be straightforward. Okay. Then let's see some notes about the scope of the variables, variable scope. The local scope, and so the local variables, are the easiest one, and are essentially the variable that you find as temporary values within a block. In this case, timestamp is 1, and so temp 2. So you cannot get the value of timestamp outside the function, not the value of temp. Okay, so they are local to this function. Okay, so this is a similar example, but it's just bringing the date, the full date. Okay, maybe it's working, maybe it's giving you the time of tomorrow, but for a bug, maybe, whatever. So, okay, but I think you are familiar with this, right? It shouldn't be new. Here again, what is happening? We have a variable that contains a string, the date is, then it's printing time using this function long date, so the output of long date. Okay, this is the function. Now, long date accepting input this timestamp variable that is time, so fine. Then it's returning temp, then concatenated, the string concatenation with the date, using date, the output from the date function, with the timestamp and this format. Okay, but what's the problem here? There is a problem. Can you see it?
Temp doesn't define itself.
Yeah, so temp is defined outside of the function. The function has a scope for itself, so cannot get values from outside except the parameter. So you need to pass the values somehow. So in theory, couldn't read temp. So this is not working. Okay. How would you solve this problem? Well, you can pass the argument, right? This is one solution. There's also another solution. Sorry?
Local variable.
2, yeah, of course.
Make it local to the function.
Sorry?
Make it local to the function.
Local to the function, but you need the value from outside.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, date is in theory. Yeah, you can put it inside. It's not a big deal, but okay. So let's see one possible solution. In this case, we are using your no. This is the. It's not using any suggestion essentially. So it's like the variable the temp is still outside. Fine. Then it's trying to print temp concatenated to the output of this function. Okay. So then it's running this code as before, and that's it. Now temp is outside, it's not using it anymore, but we need to concatenate the output of this with something relevant to make it, you know, sensible. Let's say. Okay. This is not all. Let's see another possibility, that is to pass this variable as an argument. So we have still temp outside, and then we are printing this, giving temp as one of the parameters, so taking it in this text local variable to the function and then using it here. That's it. You can also call it temp. Now it's called text, just to show you that are technically two different entities. But okay, I think this is also pretty basic, right? The other possibility was to use global variables, but we don't know yet how to use them, even though it's pretty easy. Let's assume that you have a way of logging new users and stuff. What you want to know is if the person looking at the web page is actually logged in or not. You can do it using a global function like this, that is the same as declaring any function except the keyword global before. That's it. So global, then you decide the name of the variable. In this case, is logged in. Of course, this will be a Boolean kind of variable, so true or false. But in theory, you should use global variables with caution. Okay. I mean, there are some problems that you could face using global variables. For example, if you have 1,000 lines of code, thousands, so you are using a lot of global variables. Maybe one of these, one portion of the code is modifying this global variable, giving it a value that brings to an error, to some bugs of some kind. Then it's not very easy to get where exactly this is happening, because you have the name of the global variable, okay, but where in the code is this happening? It's not that easy to get it. So it's not great in this case. Then, if you have too many of them, well, you could shadow some of them and confuse the code. We'll see an example. This could make the reading of the code not easy, finding bugs not easy, because imagine to have a global variable called x or I, and then you're using x and I somewhere else locally. It's a mess. You could get confused, and not only you, also someone else looking at your code. Okay, so it's not always great to use a lot of global variables, and they should be used only when it's strictly necessary. So when there is no other way to solve the same problem. Okay, if there's also if there is just one way to solve it without global variables, use it, not the global variables. Okay. In case you have to use them, a suggestion would be to call them all uppercase. Okay, so you can spot them. They are not constant though, so they still need $. So you will get that is a global variable. Then the static variable. Do you know what a static variable is? How many of you knows what the static variable is? Okay, more people. It seems like in the other section there are, I don't know, less expert person. I don't know what. Whatever. Anyway, static variables are actually pretty basic. Okay, what is happening is this: we have a function. Okay, we are declaring it whatever test. Static count. So this is the first variable here, and this is declared as static using the keyword static. That's it. Then the name of the variable, and then we are giving it a value, in this case 0. Fine. Then we try to print it. Print in output the value. Finally, we are using this unary operator to add 1. So if this, at the first sight, this could look like a useless function that will print 1, that will print 0 every time. Actually, this is not true. Because this is a static variable, this value is kept in memory. Every time you run the function again, the value of count is the same as the previous time you call it. So if we try to call it once, count will have 1. If we try to call it again, this will not be executed. So count is still 1, will print 1 in output and will become 2, and so on. So essentially, this is a variable that will not disappear after the function, okay, as happens with all the other local variables with this function. Okay, so it's just kept in memory. This is useful, for example, in this case, well, to count how many times you executed the function, but whatever, it's just a simple example. So is it clear what a static variable does? Okay. I saw people that raised the hand nodding, not the others, but well, I hope you got it. You should have known already. Okay, what is this? Okay, in this case, there is a little note to do to make with PHP, because you can use a literal to define a static variable, but you cannot use an expression, not even a function. Okay, this is not allowed in PHP. Okay, so only literal value. Okay, no expressions. Then, just to complicate things a little bit more, there are not just global variables, but also super global variables. Now, these are like arrays that you can access to get some information. They can be very, very useful. Let's see some examples. The first one is globals. Globals contains, these are like arrays, okay? They are more like dictionaries than arrays, but they are also called associative arrays, but whatever. For now, let's consider that each of these variables contains a set of values. Globals will contain the variables that you defined as global. Server will contain some information, headers, paths, script locations, and etc. But keep in mind, not all servers will give you this information. Okay? If the server allows it, you can read them, otherwise not. Get, underscore get, keep in mind these are all underscore. Underscore get, well, these are the variables passed using the HTTP get method that we'll see later. Post, HTTP post method. Files, essentially the items that you uploaded to this script, but this is still HTTP post. Cookie, the cookies, essentially, the variable passed using the cookies. Session, the sessions, request, all the requests like get, post, and cookie. And finally, env, that is the essentially the variables in the environment. That's it. So especially the get and post can be useful, also cookie. We'll see how to use them later. So as you see, there are magic constants that contain information. There are super global variables that contains information. So with a blank page, you already have a lot of information going on. One interesting example is this one that you find in globals. So let's see how you can use them. Imagine you want to know every user that is visiting your page, where they found the reference to your web page. Was Google, was another website, was Facebook, whatever. You can do it using globals, and especially using as key to get the value HTTP underscore referrer. Okay. In this way, you'll get the reference, so the website that essentially guide this new user to your web page, new or old event. That's it. This is helpful, especially to create statistics. It would be interesting. Okay. Is it clear?
Mm-hmm.
In case, of course, there is no reference, so essentially they just type your URL in the browser, you will have an empty string, okay? Obviously. There's a problem, and this is related to security. These super global variables are very useful, but they could be used by hackers to store some scripts of some kind, for example Unix scripts or MySQL commands of some kind that could interfere with your database. This is a big problem, and a lot of websites do not, unfortunately, do not sanitize these super global values. So they will use them directly. That is always a bad idea. So how to sanitize them? We can do easily using this function HTML entities. that essentially will transform all the character in strings like this. So essentially making the original malleolus content unarmed because it's not read as a command anymore. It's like a sequence of symbols like these ones. Okay, so it's just manipulating it. PHP can still read it, but this cannot be used as scripts or any other kind of attacks. So it's much better. And you can do it in this way. So instead of just saving the output of this value from the server, from the server global variable, super global variable, you pass this output through HTML entities. Then this will transform it and get the value here. Now is unarmed.
Without using HTML entities, how would an attacker actually attack using, like, through this?
You mean using this or without?
Without, let's say you don't sanitize it, how does the attacker?
Okay, so imagine you are getting this information. This is an example with this referrer. Maybe you will not use this for, but imagine a get request. Then you will use this get request to pilot your database, searching for some values. But if this is a table drop or something like that, or getting information that shouldn't be allowed, for example, you search an address, your address, and maybe you are using a MySQL code that will get the address of someone else. This is not allowed, okay? So you need to sanitize it, okay? In this case, actually, would be pretty unfeasible because what you have is just an information about the reference. Yes. This is not the best example, you are right. Questions?
The payback statement as well.
Sorry?
The payback statement.
The pay part.
No, payback.
The first, what do you mean?
Payback statement. Instead direct statement, just payback statement.
Oh, yeah. Good, yeah. But in general, anyway, using this technique is important not just for this kind of variable, but should be done every time you are getting some data from outside, third-party programs, users, and stuff like that. Okay, you should sanitize everything. Okay? This is one of the first things they will teach you in any corporation that is good enough. Let's say doesn't happen so often, but.
To transform to HTML entity, right? So how can we be single?
Now this is up to PHP. PHP can do it. So we'll be able to understand the content. So imagine you have these values entitized, let's say. Then to get them, PHP can do it directly. But imagine you want to read the value, there's a way to get the value back. But if you are doing it, then you are searching for something specific. So you are already sanitizing it. Like, okay, now I should have this symbol here, this symbol there. This is a simplification, because if you want to do it right, you should use something more complicated. Okay, what's the name? And now I cannot come up with the name of the function, but there are other ways to do it. Anyway, just to say, this is an example, just to tell you to sanitize your inputs. Okay, these are all other pretty basic stuff. So these are just the expressions, and well, I hope you know that to represent this mathematical expression, you can do it in this way in PHP, but not only in PHP. In this case, it's using just a function to obtain the absolute value. But except for that, this is pretty similar to this one. Okay, so what you do normally. Okay, wait now. Okay, this is too easy. For true and false, so the Boolean values, we need to give a detail actually, because, well, you know what is a Boolean expression. Okay, so that's fine. And true and false are the two predefined values to represent true and false. But in this case, as you see, they are capitalized. You can use them capitalized or not. There's only one difference. If you are using the lowercase version, so not capitalized, these are considered more stable because they cannot be redefined. Okay. In theory, a possible attack could redefine the constant true and false, but this it's a little bit unfeasible, but could still be done. So in theory, it would be better to use the not capitalized, the lowercase version of true or false. But anyway, if you try this code in your computer, you'll notice something weird. Okay, this is true, right? The first one is true. So in output, you should see the symbol that represents truth. In PHP is 1. Okay. This is not true. B is not true. You can try A and B and see what happens. With B, because it's not true, you should see the symbol that represents false. Normally, this is 0 or -1. It depends by the language. But in PHP, is simply null. So if you try, you should see, you can also just try the first two. 1 for the first expression, so true, but nothing in the second. So null means false in PHP. Okay. This would be interesting. I think there's another slide about it. Yeah. It's just explain you this concept. So you see 1 when it's true, nothing, null when it's false. Okay. That's it. Can you see these two outputs? You can try also an even simpler version of this text. BR is obviously there to have the output printed in 2 separate lines. It's 2 columns basically. Right? Working. No. Do something. Working? Okay. Okay. There is another way to test it easier actually. You could have used the constant true and false and see how they are translated. They should be 1 and null anyway. They are the same, okay? Fine. Another thing to say is about literals and variables that are considered like type of expressions in PHP because they return a value. For example, the number 73 or the string hello, these are literals, and you know what a variable is. These are some examples. We have this literal Brian that returns the string Brian. 37 returns the value 37, so you can bind them to this variable and this other variable. This is a kind of numerical literal. This is a string, a constant literal, and then a variable, and then numeric variable, but this depends on how you are defined it. Well, this should be already known by all of you. This is what happens, of course. The only one that is null is false, of course. No, nothing fancy. Okay. This is a statement, and this is an expression. So an expression gives you something, is elaborated, is computed to obtain a result. In this case, it's like 366 minus day number. If the number days to new year is less than 30, then you have this statement that says not long now to the new year. That's just a simple example of a function. Actually, sorry, a statement. Okay. Nothing new for sure. Again, operators, well, we already saw them. There's something, comparison is fine, the bitwise. Do you know how the bitwise works?
It's the comparison change of each.
Yeah. It's a kind of low-level operator. Okay, it works on bits. Okay. This could be useful in some contexts. There are a lot of interviews done using this kind of operators. So if you don't know them, I suggest you to review them. Okay. Okay, we saw the unary operator in the previous lecture. Binary are too simple, you know, addition, subtraction, stuff like that. Ternary operator, we introduced it during the last part of the last lecture. This one, is it clear what this does? Right. So, if it's true, then X, otherwise Y. This is the precedence for the operators, but I suggest you not to rely on them. Use parentheses every time, even if you know how they work. It's never a good idea not to use parentheses. Then we'll introduce these relational operators, just one, even if they are pretty obvious, and you should know them. Maybe there are some details to analyze. Equality, comparison, and logical. Let's start with equality, and this will be it. Now, equality, you use 2 times the symbol equals. That's basic, right? You should know if this is equal to March, then prints this. When you use it only once, this is another kind of operator, and we bind this value to this, to the variable here, okay? Now you know. But sometime possible bugs could happen if you type equal here, but not in PHP. For example, in C or C++, not in PHP. Okay, fine. Okay, there is a note to say. If the 2 operands of an equality expression are of different types, so they are different, PHP will convert them to whatever types makes the best sense to it. This is a loosely typed language, so you can actually try to use this kind of expression where you have 2 different things. Normally, someone would have taught you to not compare apple to pears, but in this case, you can actually do it. For example, let's see the example directly. Oh, wait, this is another example. If you have a string that contains just numbers, and then you try to compare it to an actual number, the string is automatically converted to the number containing it. In this case, tell me, let's stop at this, the first if statement. Okay, what is the output?
1.
Why?
A and B are equal, even though it has positive, but without having that.
Yeah, so exactly. So essentially, this is translated as a number to 1000. This is 1002. It's translated to the number here. So these 2 are essentially the same thing, and we have 1 in output. And the second one, has another operator here. It is not quality. It's something stronger. Is sorry? Yeah, it's called identity anyway. But yeah. In this case, means essentially that the 2 values needs to be absolutely equal. So in this case, what is the output? Without reading here. Don't read.
Because is it null because there is 2 equal, so it's going to be.
You say 1.
I said no, it's going to be null. No.
Oh, 2. You mean now? Okay.
Absolutely not equal.
Now.
No.
Now. Some other opinions? Can you read the thing on my face? Maybe. Anyway, it's null, yes, because the 2 are not absolutely equal, right? They are not. So, if you want to be strict on comparison, you use identity. Okay. Otherwise, you can use equals.
So by this you mean that both of those variables have to be pointing to the exact same object in memory?
No. Actually, not. As you see, these are 2 different strings. Okay, so no, there's no need to be the same object in memory.
Or for the identity operator to be true?
No. They could be they don't need to be the same object. If you have no plus here, this should be still true. Okay. Maybe you're thinking about another language.
What question?
Because in other languages, how should I say? So.
But you're exactly equal, even though it has positive sign, it's still that 1,000 is positive 1,000. So 1 is not, so it means that immediately in the same shape and form. That's what?
Yeah, the same, in this case are two strings, so it's comparing if they have the same characters, so absolutely equal. Because there's one difference, they are not equal.
So it doesn't favor mathematical reasoning and
logic? No, because it's not converting them. Yeah. So when you use this, they are compared as strings, okay, without the conversion.
The identity operator, what you understand, it compares both the type and the value.
Yeah. Yeah. Keep in mind there is no type in PHP, but yes, basically.
Interpret type.
Yeah, let's see. Okay. This is, I think this is the same example. Oh, well, this is the opposite, so we're not equal. So if it's not equal here, what would be the output of the first if? No? Yeah. Essentially, it's the opposite. So they are converted to the numbers. They are not equal because they are equal. So in this case, you have null. But in this case, you have 2.
Yeah.
Right? Because in this case, it's saying they are not absolutely equal. And in fact, they are not. Okay. So this is the weird thing about quality in PHP. But that's pretty much it. Okay. Questions? Okay, that's enough